Hello and welcome to episode 55 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. Chris, we have another fabulous guest today in the run-up to the Cycling Esports World Championships.
It is truly humbling to have the guests that we've had in this run into the World Championships. Now we have a former world champion, which you're going to introduce in a moment. I've always wanted to interview this person because in a lot of ways, the trajectory of his career parallels the sport, from its origins to the evolution to where we are now. And it'll be good to get that insight and also, maybe a prediction for the world.
Well, already having achieved top spot in the Cycling Esports World Championships, in the three that we have had so far, he has never finished off of the podium, and he's heading to Abu Dhabi for his fourth World Championship final very, very shortly. Welcome to the Virtual Velo Podcast, Jason Osborne. Welcome, Jason.
Hello.
It's fabulous to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure, and taking the time out in that run up with your preparation for the World Championship. So really, really appreciated. Thank you. I'm going to start, however, by not talking about the World Championships, which we will get to, don't worry. Recently, you made quite a poignant statement, actually, on social media about your future career. I don't think you really had the chance to publicly share your thoughts on the decision. Would you like to tell us why you're stepping away from Alpecin Deceuninck and what the future holds for you? Because I think there's a lot of people really interested in that.
The big picture of why I made the decision and why I made the step, but you never get to know all this you cannot communicate it in one Instagram post, but basically it was a bit of a process for me. I started the year in quite good shape, going to Tour Down Under and then the UAE tour, and then I started developing a problem with my hip. So I really, it got worse and worse with every race. Luckily, I found the reason for it. So now I think it's solved, and it's looking like I don't really have any problems anymore. But it kind of, went on and then didn't really improve, and the hip got worse and worse, and then didn't really know what was going on, why it was like this big of a problem, and then went from race to race and just didn't find my form. I couldn't really perform on the road. And then kind of just into this process of just going to the races and not really knowing if the hip is gonna be good or bad or what was gonna happen. And then to lower my expectations, of course, because if the hip would hold up and I would be having a good race or a bad race. I couldn't trust myself anymore in my own body. So that was had a big impact. And then, but it was then looking back to when I made the decision to quit, I think I made it quite clear that it wasn't necessarily the hip that made me come up to this decision, because I just noticed over the weeks, months with the racing that it's just not really my passion anymore. I didn't really enjoy the racing as much. And looking back, I think mainly because I come from the sport of rowing, which is also a team sport. But the difference there is if you compete in the World Championships and you're in an 8, say, and then there's 9 people in the boat, every 9 of them on paper is world champion. And kind of this aspect, it's a team sport, yes, but it's also an individual sport because everyone gets rewarded with a win in the end. And that was also what was missing for me, because I always like to work on myself and get the most out of myself. It may sound a bit egoistic, but that's just what I like doing. And I had that in rowing, and I didn't really transition into cycling. I had some good races, and I did have some success also here and there, but in the end, I just didn't find the joy in. I really wanted to do my own thing again, and actually, I enjoyed my time before I got to Alpecin way more, as a privateer, and just doing the rowing, but then also doing the cycling esports or whatever event I wanted to do. And that gives me the freedom, and I just wanted that freedom back. I wanted to gain control over my life again, and I was just in that spiral of not enjoying it anymore, and I just wanted to get out of it. And I think since I made that decision, I'm a way more happier person, and I just feel was definitely the right decision.
I must say that that's very brave of you, Jason, to make that decision for your happiness. I think that people look at professional athletes and they just think that they're machines. They don't realize that there's actually a person with a personality, with goals that may not necessarily align with their team or their sport. It is brave of you, and I commend you for doing that. The people that are listening to this might not know about your history in rowing, that you were the silver medalist in Germany in the 2020 Tokyo Olympic rowing regatta.
Yeah, that's right.
And they will know that you were the first world champion in 2020, the inaugural world championship on Zwift. How did you get into cycling with that elite rowing background, specifically virtual cycling?
Like as a rower, you've got the physique, obviously, you've got the raw power. So it's like actually easier to get into the e-cycling because there's no barrier racing in the peloton, certain team tactics, like there are tactics, of course, and it's more and more important nowadays in the e-cycling as well, as we see on MyWhoosh, like the races, how they unfold, it's like quite a bit of tactics. So it's, I wouldn't say there's no tactics, but the raw power, and like I basically brought all that into the sport. So like actually transitioning into esports was not like the hardest thing for me as a rower. And then found success quite early, and I knew that like if I can get that top spot on the first esport world champs, that's gonna like maybe sort of be an entry into the world tour, like back then when I wanted to get in the world tour. And then luckily I managed to do so and get that first spot. So then from there on, like things started really going on, like, and it really brought me then into the world tour basically, and got into road racing. Yeah. And then in the beginning, I didn't have high expectations. I had goals and I wanted to succeed on the road, but I just took it as it came basically, and took things step by step. And then it actually also didn't start bad. Like first of all, I was racing with the development team because the World Tour team back then was basically full. They had no leftover spot. So I was 1 year racing with the development team, and then won 2 stage races right away. And then almost won the Arctic race of Norway, where I unluckily had a puncture in the last 4 kilometers on the last stage, and I was like in yellow. So that could have been a very good start, was already a good start, but then an even better start. But yeah, back then I thought, okay, it's going well, and took it step by step. And then, myself in the World Tour.
Jason, was that World Tour goal what motivated you to compete in that first Cycling Esports World Championships back in 2020?
I think a big part, it's like I saw it as an opportunity to get to like an entry into the World Tour, because I knew it would draw attention and I might be able to get picked up by some bigger teams. And then that was like also a goal of it. But I also really enjoy e-racing, I have to say. And it's like I've been like using Zwift back then from where it basically started. So I was always passionate about it, and it was also just a joy.
So you mentioned that the World Championship kind of put you on the map, Jason. What other ways did it impact your life, being the first esports world champion?
It opened like myself into the whole cycling world, no? And I was like, when I was rowing, I was always passionate about cycling, and then I was always talking about numbers, talking about this, and then I knew I had the engine, but I was never really taking the first foot into professional cycling. And then really with the e-cycling, it really just started going, and then I was in all of a sudden, and then things get going from there.
I had the occasion to speak with Jay Vine's wife, Bree, about, I think it was a day after the World Championships where he had that unfortunate crash. And as we know, Jay Vine has had a couple of pretty horrific crashes recently, one in the Basque Country, and there's also one during the Vuelta, I believe. And she said to me, Chris, Jay has had such a great career. He's obviously won the Zwift Academy. That's how he was able to secure his contract. But even before he was on the road, he was a mountain biker. He obviously had fairly decent bike handling skills even before he went into the Zwift Academy. And she says to me, all the media will ever talk about is that he's a Zwift racer, and that's the reason why he doesn't have the bike handling skills and has had the unfortunate mishaps that he's had, which is obviously very unfair to him. So what did your peers in the pro peloton think of cycling sports racers? Like, do they take your rainbow jersey seriously? You've obviously been in the pro peloton now for 4 or 5 years. Has that perception evolved over that time?
Well, I have to say, especially in the World Tour, like there's a lot of I'd say maybe arrogant riders and people that really think a lot of themselves. And then, of course, you get some comments here and there. That's normal. Like whenever not like the natural way of getting into cycling when you're 10 years old or whatever. So you always get some comments here and there. I remember like at Basque Country, actually, one guy, a Finnish guy, you're the Zwift racer, huh? And we just had like a small fight. And I was like, yeah, like just a bit unnecessary. But yeah, you always get these comments with, I just don't really understand it and I just don't really care. But it's like, it's just a way, I think, in my opinion, to identify strong riders. Like the e-cycling is important with the Zwift Academy and all that to find those riders, because I think nobody knows good riders there are, and that's a way to identify them. And I think it's a good tool. And even with Jay, like, yeah, okay, he had like tons of crashes, but the way he pushed through that and still be successful, even more astonishing to me, with having all those crashes, but then still getting those results is like, to me, I don't really care. Looking on the paper, what he achieved is quite remarkable. And then I don't really look at those crashes. It's still a great career. So I don't really think this argument of are you a near racer is really valid. So,
and it is, isn't it? You know, that talent identification aspect to it and finding superb athletes who would just have gone hidden otherwise, I think is really interesting. You're back racing esports, and quite recently, you know, it's been week in, week out. You know, you've been on the Sunday Race Club, on MyWhoosh. You're ever present back again, which for those of us watching is fabulous to see. How do those races compare? Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the Grand Tours, how do they compare? I mean, they are different. You've got one days, you've got multiple stages. The logical bit is that esports competition is much shorter. But in terms of effort, in terms of preparation, in terms of training, how do they compare to being out on the road?
Like, I think in terms of training and in terms of preparation, I think you're much more compressed. You can get away with maybe a bit lesser volume and like just more focused efforts on like what you need to perform on. So that gives you also a bit of more free time, like in your normal life. So that's a big benefit, I would say. But in terms of the racing, it's just as hard. I think it's, even if it's just an hour, but this hour is like super hard. Like if it's a really hard Sunday Race Club, after the Sunday,
I can see how that would be most, you know, obviously very difficult, but in a different way, right? The races are shorter, but they're harder, they're more intense.
I'd say like cut off all the beginning phases of a road race where the breakaway goes and all that stuff, and then like the control part where the teams are controlling, and then cut off all that, and then just race the last third of the race. That is like the Sunday Race Cup, I'd say.
I love that. Take the beginning and take the end and take out the middle.
Yeah, no, it's just much more compressed, but it's like just as hard, yeah.
Taking away the actual race part of it, the competitive part of it, there's a lot of other aspects of racing on the road that make it appealing. That you said, the team aspect, you're going to different places, you're seeing different things, you're staying in all those really fine hotels. Are you going to be able to get that satisfaction if you're focusing on esports?
Absolutely. I think even, to be honest, I think even more, because now you've got the freedom and you can go wherever you want. You can do training camps whenever you want, wherever you want. Yeah, you just need to take your trainer with you or make sure you have a trainer wherever you go, and then you're good to go. So I think you're even more free. Like after the World Champs, I will be probably in Spain somewhere over the winter, and I will just take the trainer with me, and we'll have good weather to train and race from there. And I think it's ideal.
I love that idea. Have trainer, will travel.
And make some money.
Yeah, that's also a good part of it. Yeah, an important part, definitely. And now with WhooSh basically enabling athletes to do it like full time, it's a big. MyWhoosh are making it possible for people to do it full time, and it's a different sport. It's a different sport, and it's getting more and more professional. And so then I think we can all be very pleased that MyWhoosh is stepping up to it and making it possible. Huh?
And do those evolutions of the platforms and the discipline itself then excite you for the future? There's different platforms now, different options to race, different race programs that you can follow, different race series. Does all of that evolution excite you in terms of esports moving forward?
Yeah, I do have to say the last few weeks, although it went quite well for me, I would have wished for a few longer climbs, perhaps. But yeah, we will have to see how it develops. I mean, you're always adaptable, and then see what they bring up for the future. And I think if you've got the engine, you can always adjust to the race format. And then, because it was also like different for me with not having those longer climbs, like just to know where you can make the differences. And then, yeah, you have to get that aspect from the road a bit into it, and just to find your edge, or like try to find a spot where you can make the difference, now, even without having those longer climbs. So there was some adjustment needed, but yeah, I think I'm on a good way, and let's see how it goes, huh? What Whoosh has to offer for the next weeks, months.
So we've mentioned MyWhoosh several times during this interview. But as Emma just alluded to, the evolution of the sport has provided more viable options for you and all the racers. Are you planning on racing any of the elite racing on other platforms? The Zwift World Series is going now. Are you planning on racing on Zwift? Have any plans to do any racing on any other platforms?
I actually got asked to race the Zwift Racing League by Martin, like my teammate, but I said for this year, because it's like only a handful of races, not a lot. And I was like, basically, also that it's that late in the evening, I didn't want to ruin my sleep and just be completely destroyed and not being able to sleep, and that affect my recovery and all that. I would rather be as fresh as I can on the start line on any given Sunday and then race there. Also, obviously, like, it's a bit more attractive from the prize money wise and all that. So I was just like, it. For this year, I focus on Whoosh, and then we see whatever opportunity comes. Maybe there's going to be some more racing on other platforms. I always have an eye out for it, but yeah, I think for me, it's just sticking with my Whoosh at the moment. That's it.
I think this is really interesting because you've come along from rowing. You've identified that you wanted to go onto the World Tour. The Esports World Championships and Racing Esports has helped you make that step and that goal, Jason, which is quite a traditional model. Now, we've talked to young riders and young racers who have said they want to follow that aspiration, that pathway that the likes of you yourself have followed. And they're looking to esports to actually get onto that World Tour, whether that's through the Zwift Academy, whether that's through racing at a high level, getting into these World Championship finals. There are racers there who want to emulate what you've done. You're coming back the other way, which I think is really, really interesting. And it sort of reverses that traditional talent identification model. Do you expect that perhaps riders might follow the trend that you are now on, in the future as esports becomes more and more credible, and particularly as a career or financial option?
Definitely. If you just compare, like, even the World Tour, like, everybody knows if you're not like a star or like in the top first percent, like, it's not that credible. Like, it's actually, for what you have to do, it's really not like, I don't think it's worth it going to the race, risking your life, going down a descent with like 70 k's an hour at the Dauphiné, and then this mass crash where I was also in. And on that day, I was always thinking, like, I could just be in sunny Spain training and just racing once a week and enjoying my life much more. And I was like having those thoughts when I had like those kind of races with like loads of crashes and all the bad sides of road racing. I always thought, wouldn't it be nicer now to just do esports and just enjoy it? And I think it's good now that you get this separation. It's made possible now, actually, for athletes to do it full time. And then I think you're going to see more and more people going down that path of like, or maybe like road racers that have been in the World Tour, or maybe pro Conti, or that don't see the joy anymore, or like don't see it like coming, that they will have a big jump in their career, and then they just say, okay, I give it a try. Like, I even like last week, there's a quite a big name coming now to Whoosh. I know that already. I cannot say, but he has also been racing on the road, and he's has a good engine, and he's going to be a fearful competition. So it's the people are coming. Strong people.
Well, you've obviously found that racing on MyWhoosh is a viable career option for you, and you're going to make the focus from there. I'm sure it started out as a side hustle for you, right? You have your road contract and you're going to do the esports from your home. It's convenient. It's a way for you to supplement your income. But I can't remember the last time that you weren't in the money on MyWhoosh.
Yeah, it's like, when I had the issue with my hip, it was a bit I have to say it was a bit like unreliable. Like I had some good races and some bad races because when the hip held, I had a good race, and when the hip wasn't good, I maybe got away with a top five. Or that made the big change. When my hip just completely went back to normal again, I got to my old self, and now I'm able to pull off what my head actually is telling me. Before it was like I wanted to attack at a certain point, but I was like, maybe what if I attack and then my hip just explodes and then I risk everything and that's just gone. Now I just follow my head, follow my intuition, and then I'm just back to my old self again. So that enables me to do a lot better in the races.
When you are back to your old self, are you making more money on MyWhoosh or making more money with your road contract?
I'd say it was still a bit more maybe in the World Tour. Like I don't want to talk numbers, of course, but it's like it's still good, but it's still also at a point where I say it's not worth it. Like it's not worth the risk of crashing. And also like what I didn't like is when there were riders that were ill, you got a call, can you please do this race now? And then you just planned like a weekend with your girlfriend somewhere on a weekend trip or whatever. And then it just came a call, we need you here. And it's like, it was not always like everything was not plannable. Like you had to always sometimes jump whenever they wanted you to. And it felt a bit like, I wouldn't say slavery, but it was a bit like you were just a bit too much in control of them. And then I just wanted to get rid of that part and just, yeah.
Jason, you talk about, a lot more freedom. You also, right at the very beginning when you were talking about rowing, were talking about how much you love that team environment, but also that freedom to do your individual thing. I'm thinking about that in relation to the future of cycling esports. You're an individual racing the Sunday Race Club, but you're part and parcel of a team at the end of the month. You're about to represent your country at the Esports World Championships again. There's sort of team environments, there's individual environments. Give me your vision for the future about how you think that should play out on cycling esports. How do you think the discipline should move forward to try and involve and around teams, nations, and individuals?
Well, in aspects of like the team aspect itself, I think you see it more and more. It's really before, like I could say like when I watched an e-race, I was like having the aspects and the tactics of in the World Tour. Like I was watching the races and I thought like, what on earth are they doing? Sometimes I was like, couldn't really understand like certain tactics and stuff. But now things really, I think, yeah, you see a lot like smarter moves, and it's really developing in a quite an interesting way. And like also teams start to create the edges and like over the other teams, and it's like you see how they play against each other, and that's like really, really cool to see, but also means that you have to go with the trend, and you have to also like always try to improve and see how you can beat the other teams. So it's getting really competitive, and I really like also this team aspect that you get in MyWhoosh that you don't necessarily get like in the other platforms. Okay, you also have teams on Zwift, but it's not like at the end of the month you have a final on Whoosh where like all the teams all of a sudden really start working together. Like you see maybe some people in the teams on Whoosh, they don't really perform that well in the qualifiers, but then in the finals they really empty themselves to like really get the most out of the teams, because for them it's probably like the most important race in the whole month, because like individually they might know that they cannot really get in that top 5 like in the qualifiers, so their only shot at it is like the team's classification, and then you really see like all of a sudden some people really strong moves, no? But it's just to work for the team. So it's I really like that aspect that MyWhoosh has to offer with that team classification every final.
When we had Lionel Vujasin on a few episodes ago, actually maybe a couple months ago, he also made the transition and he's racing full time on esports, Zwift, and on MyWhoosh. And Chris, it's not all it's cracked up to be, because you have to be on form all the time. If you don't win, then you don't make money. Whereas on the road, you have a guaranteed contract. Is that something that concerns you? You've obviously had these injury concerns. So is that something that concerns you? And if so, where do you see the sport evolving so that you have more security?
Well, I don't necessarily see the risk. I'm a kind of personality that always performs well under pressure. So it's like whenever there's pressure, I perform well. I cannot have enough pressure, basically. I'm not really scared in that aspect. But yeah, looking into the future, I think, yeah, it would be cool to have like teams that maybe pay a salary to the riders, or like so you have that fixed income. But yeah, it's always a question of funding, and that's like the main thing. Huh? You have to have the resources for it.
So you thrive under pressure. The World Championships is going to be a live event final. I have a feeling that you're really looking forward to this. So tell us about what you're feeling about the live event final. How do you see it playing out for you? Are you excited to go to Abu Dhabi and have that experience?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the live events actually. Like I've done the digital Swiss back then in Switzerland. I got invited for it. It was on Ruby, I think. I know how the feeling is and how the atmosphere is. And it was also quite a nice event. Like they had a DJ and it was like all well organized, and I enjoyed that. So I think it's not going to be much different. I think it will be probably more spectacular. Like they probably got all the resources, and the big arena is like looking incredible. So I think it's going to be really exciting. And then also the aspect of seeing your competitors is really, it's going to change things. There's nothing to hide. So if you look next to you and you see he's really suffering and you still have like another gear left, then it might be a good idea to throw in another acceleration. So it makes things more exciting, I think.
How are you feeling about the 3-race format for the final?
Yeah, it's like developing like now that's like every year kind of a series rather than like one race. Like last year with Zwift, they're also the same. I'm not looking forward to first stage with the sprint. That's not like my biggest strength, I'd say. Like I can sprint, but it's not like a pure sprinter. So just trying to get it done in the best way possible, the first stage, but then second and third stage, definitely there are like places to make a difference. So I think it's a good format. In the semifinal, it was a bit chaotic with like 150 riders at the start. It was really, sometimes, for example, in the test event, I tried to go for the sprint at the bottom of the climb on the second stage, and I was fourth. So I got good points. And then I was even able to get going on the climb, and I got like second, or I even won, I think, on the top of the climb. So I was like, okay, great. If you can do that in a semifinal, get fourth and then top 3 or something on the top, then you've got some good points. I was just like, no way. When the semifinal went off, it was impossible to go to the front. Like you had to do 800 watts to even get to the front, and then you had to sprint, and then you had to do the climb. So it was impossible. So with like only 20 riders, I think it's going to be a lot better, less hectic, and maybe I'm hoping that it's going to be a bit more selective and you can get some separations, and we will see. It'll be exciting.
It will be. What are your thoughts, Jason? What are you predicting? Do you make predictions about who the key competition are and where they might finish?
I think he's predicting that he's going to win. I can't think of predicting anything else.
That was his response, Chris.
I don't want to talk about myself. I mean, like I've been showing I'm in good shape, so we'll give it the best shot, and I hope for the best. But yeah, definitely looking at the competition, Ollie Jones is in really good shape. Also, the last Whoosh races he was really on point. But then also it's a punchy course, so cannot count out people like Vujasin, Kaminsky. They're always good on those short efforts. So yeah. It's going to be, I think there will not be big surprises though. Like, I think you have quite a handful of people that will compete for the podium, unless maybe some people outside have the day of their life or something happens, then you might see some surprises. But I think you have a handful of people that compete for the podium or should compete for the podium, and then it should play out that way.
I think both the men's and the women's are pretty much exactly as you say. There should be a really strong handful of racers in those race fields who are very capable of making the podium. And it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out, and whether somebody has targeted their training beautifully and is the surprise of the day, because you do get them.
I'm going to hold my predictions for preview articles I've written for Cycling Weekly and Cycling News. So you can catch my predictions there. You already have an Olympic medal, Jason. Is winning another one in cycling esports on your radar?
An Olympic medal you're talking about?
Yes, we have indications that cycling esports is going to be in the Olympic esports game. Is that important to you?
If it's going to come to the Olympics, it's a nice goal to have, definitely. And I know I'm good at it. I would definitely in for it and try. Of course, we have to see, if it all is going to evolve and it's going to really be in the program. I don't really know. Maybe there's some insiders that know it a bit better. I have no idea. It's like with the Olympic series. I don't actually know what was the event called in Singapore, where Martin, my teammate, also was. I think they won. I can't remember, but yeah, that was already, I think, the first potential sign of it becoming Olympic. Would be a big opportunity, and would be cool to add an Olympic medal in another sport.
You could join a very select group of people who have done that and have Olympic medals in more than one sport, in 2 different sports. Talking about the future, Jason, you've had a lot of change over the last 12 months. Where do you see your career in 5 years' time?
Well, I'm just going with the trend at the moment. I'm just doing what I love and what I like, and we just see how it develops. How e-racing itself develops. I want to try some gravel racing, though, I have to say, for next year. My girlfriend, she competed at the Gravel Worlds in Belgium, and I was a spectator, basically, and just helping her. And it was attractive to me, I have to say. I give it a shot next year to qualify, and then we'll see. But yeah, I just see how things goes and follow the trend.
It was great having you. Your candidness and your honesty and your openness with everything was really refreshing. And we were going to be in Abu Dhabi cheering you on, and we wish you great luck.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, we do indeed. And thank you so much for joining us today, Jason. Really, really appreciate it. So if you want to keep up with all things 2024 Cycling Esports World Championships, you can follow the live blog on the Deceuninck website, can't they, Chris? Who do we have blogging throughout the championships?
We're going to have some of Jason's peers that are going to be blogging. Hopefully not any candid shots of Jason doing things in the hotel room, but Lionel is going to contribute. We have Zach Neer is going to contribute. We have Josh and Kate as well, and you, Emma, and Matt also with some behind the scenes with the broadcasting. But I think it's going to be interesting because it's something that the viewers will not see. It will provide some of the culture that people will not necessarily know about Abu Dhabi and the region there. But also, just the broadcast itself and it being the first live event final, I think it'll be interesting to get a different perspective of that.
Yeah, Emma and Matt are going to be there live? You're going to be the live commentators?
We are indeed, Jason.
Nice.
We will be there. My flight is booked from Heathrow next week, and my co-commentator Matt Payne and I will be bringing you the English broadcast.
Oh, that's nice. But then also the what is it? What is his name? Abdullah?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I have to say, then like 2 years ago when it started, and they only had not the English commentators,
the Arabic.
It was really funny, I have to say, and I think he's a funny guy. So it's yeah.
I understand it will be. You will have the English commentary, the French commentary, and the Arabic commentary that you would normally have on the Sunday Race Club will be going out. I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe we'll all be going out for the broadcast. And in fact, if you head over to the MyWhoosh YouTube channel, I think they are already on there ready to go. So you can take a look and see what is happening. You can subscribe to the Virtual Velo Podcast on your favourite podcast provider. And as we've just mentioned, both Chris and I will be on the ground in Abu Dhabi, and the Virtual Velo Podcast will be back after the World Championships, but we are going to be live on the ground throughout that whole time. Until then, stay safe, enjoy your cycling. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.